Drought is a major economic concern for the country of Uruguay. In 2009, Uruguay's Agricultural Programming and Policy Office estimated that the country's economy lost an amount equivalent to 400 to 450 million US dollars due to a several months-long drought. Creating a drought severity index could help ranchers and policymakers make better decisions on how drought affects Uruguay.
Drought severity index would help a lot in Uruguay. It would help in development early warning systems. It would also help in development practice to prevent drought impacts, and it would also help, I think, in insurance service.
This study chose 10 test sites throughout Uruguay's rangelands in order to use methodologies to develop an effective drought severity index.
In this project, we are trying to understand what is the relationship between precipitation, temperature, and vegetation indices that we are monitoring using NASA satellite with the productivity of the rangeland. Is there a resilience from the rangeland or the practices used by the farmers to cope with drought? In this project, we used TRIM to monitor rainfall. We use MODIS land surface temperature to monitor the temperature, and we use vegetation indices. And so we try to understand what is the impact on rain on the vegetation. Is there any adaptation of the vegetation to dry conditions? Are there changes in the species and the productivity?
We found that vegetation indices should be used with caution with respect to drought monitoring. 3 scatterplots scaled to show conditions typical of drought show positive anomalies for NDWI. This means that even though it was hotter than average and there was less precipitation than average, the vegetation was still wetter than average. The same relationship was found for NDVI, meaning that even under drought conditions, the vegetation was also greener than average. And finally, even when conditions were colder than average and precipitation was less than average, there were still positive anomalies within NDWI and NDVI. These findings most likely show some resilience within the vegetation and should be investigated further in future work. Applying the model with the highest correlation to previous drought indices to Uruguay yields maps that can be used by ranchers and policymakers to make better decisions during times of drought. In conclusion, the DSI is an improvement, but it needs to be validated through future fieldwork such as in situ field measurements of plant species resilience.
Well, NASA development and SNIA collaborating, working together, I think it's a great thing for us because it's helping us to monitoring field crops and pasture status and making production forecast mainly on remote sensing technique based and modeling. So it's a good thing.